Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Tim Longman. I am the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs in the Pardee School of Global Studies, where the African Studies Center is based. African Studies Center, though, of course, is a university-wide program, so we are very happy to have a more STEM-oriented lecture this year than usual. This lecture is funded by the Bradford Morse Distinguished Lectureship Fund. That fund was established through the generous support of the Industry Council for Development, and it has been taking place annually since 1989. The lectureship was created in recognition of the contributions of the Honorable Bradford Morse, who served as a Republican congressman from Massachusetts for 6 terms, back when that was actually a possibility in Massachusetts, until he resigned to accept an appointment as Undersecretary General of the United Nations in 1972. From 1976 until 1986, he served as the head of the United Nations Development Program, an agency that has played a key role in supporting economic growth in the developing world, including sub-Saharan Africa. From 1986 to 1991, he served as president of the Salzburg Global Seminar, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to challenge current and future leaders to develop ideas for solving global problems. He passed away on December 18th, 1994, at the age of 73. So this lecture that we have today falls into that good tradition of annual lectures focused on Africa and on development. Our speaker this year is Harrison Charo Karisa, who is a senior fisheries specialist at the World Bank Group. He co-leads the Aquabusiness Investment Advisory Platform and ProBlue to support governments and the private sector to assist aquaculture development, to strengthen livelihoods, and enhance food and nutrition security. He assists country and regional teams across the world to design and implement sustainable and viable aquaculture projects using innovative technologies. He has over 25 years experience working in fisheries and aquaculture research and development, and has published widely. As World Fish Country Director for Egypt and Nigeria, and as Secretary for the African chapter of the World Aquaculture Society, he was instrumental in laying the foundation of the Fish for Africa Innovation Hub. He holds a Ph.D. in animal sciences with a focus on fish breeding, genetics, and aquaculture from Wageningen University of Life Sciences in the Netherlands, and he has a Master of Science in Biodiversity from the Swedish Agricultural University. Please join me in welcoming Harrison Charo Karisa.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that wonderful introduction. You missed a few things, so I'm going to add it myself. I have 1 wife and 3 children. Only 1. We had a president who used to say, I have 1 wife, but I have 1 wife. Anyway, so, that is a good discourse about who I am. I am not a climate change expert, so you don't expect me to do a lot of jargon on that. In case I say anything that is not completely true on the climate change part, you know that I have already told you that I'm not an expert in climate change. My expertise on fish, aquaculture, fish genetics, those things I can talk about. But today here, I'm here to talk to you about this interesting topic. And I'm saying turning the tide on climate and food insecurity in Africa. I want to really thank 2 gentlemen first, and then some ladies, for the insistence that I should come here to speak today. I will start with Les Kaufman, a friend of mine from a long time ago, and John Okechi, another friend of mine for a long time ago. Then they were joined by 2 ladies, Christine and Elise. So, they have been very pushy. In fact, I was not to come here. But because of their push, I had to rotate some meetings so that I can be here. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm also, of course, thanking all of you for the warm welcome that I've had since I came here. It's been really, really wonderful. Now, where I work, you have been told that I work at the World Bank Group. We are looking at something called the livable planet. In fact, our mission is to end poverty on a livable planet. So this is a key thing. It's not a very old thing. This livable planet thing we began a few years ago when the new president came in of the bank. And we think that it is capturing a lot of what this meeting is about. From morning, we have had a lot of very wonderful presentations, really good. And I really want to appreciate the presenters that came ahead of me. They are really experts in climate change and other things. Therefore, I will not dare repeat much of the things they spoke. If there's a slide that is looking like that, I will skip it very quickly. But let's see how it goes. So the question that I asked was, is the planet today livable? Do we have a livable planet as we speak? And the other question here is, can the planet remain livable under climate change scenarios that we have been seeing throughout the day? Now, climate change is not a uniform activity. It impacts different regions differently, but I can say for sure that every region is actually impacted. So we are going to focus on Africa, that's where we are, but definitely every region is impacted. So we have seen this moving before I tell you to move. I shouldn't do that. So we have seen that there's a lot of impact across the board. Today we talked about I think floods was one of the big things that were spoken. Droughts. I didn't hear so much about heat waves though, but I think that's also another thing that is coming up. It's very, very strong and very problematic. And basically we can say for sure that natural systems are under very, very heavy stress at the moment. So yes, there are places we can say they are livable, they are high-risk areas, and there are also some other areas that look more livable, but the truth is that everywhere we go, there is an effect on climate change. Sub-Saharan Africa, which we are going to be looking at, has borne the brunt of most of these things. Water scarcity, coastal areas exposed to sea level rise, disease-prone issues, cyclones and things like that. But we also have other places that are ostensibly livable. We talk about Canada and North Europe, but they have been hit very hard by floods we had in Spain the other time. We have had a lot of fires that are not very easy to explain, and so on and so forth. And of course, this is all affecting infrastructure. And of course, the most hard hit are those who are poor. Poor countries are hard hit. Human-driven climate change is already impacting all regions. And these observed changes are basically contributed. Humans are cheeky everywhere. It's not just in part of the world. I mean, it's everywhere. And even those who are not looking so cheeky because they are probably in a livable place, they still tend to affect everybody else. So this is usually a very big problem. We can talk about hot extremes. We talk about heavy precipitation at the same time. And I've been thinking all along in my mind, we heard about Lake Victoria, floods. There's drought. All these things. Can't we harness these things? Can we think properly and do something better? And I hope that today we are going to be able to think differently. So these are things biodiversity loss has been very big across the board, 73% for several years now. Africa is leading in this biodiversity loss, but not because Africans are bad, it's because they have more biodiversity. So they are losing a lot because they have more. In any case, we have emissions all over the place, which are, heat comes in, there are fires and all that. On the other side, we have issues of fish. We talked about some, overfishing. Somebody was mentioning overfishing today. Is that a climate change thing? Not necessarily, but it's a human thing. We also have a lot of chemical use, which is actually affecting the ozone layer in many respects. Freshwater use, we have a lot of, freshwater, abstraction. That, in fact, is also including effluents and so on. So the freshwater is also under very bad pressure. 70% of the freshwater is under pressure. And also soils are really suffering because of climate and bad practices. I didn't hear also this morning about the causes of climate change. Again, I can, of course, bring in some of the people who are here in the morning to say more on that one. But basically, we have natural processes. We also have anthropogenic processes. So the natural ones, we don't dwell so much on that. But I think also we need to think about what is happening in the natural one. Is there a relationship between these two things? The anthropogenic drivers are the ones that bring in or add CO2, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen oxide, that emissions that they increase the heat trapping. This thing is moving without me telling it to move. Whoever did this. All right. So then we, of course, we know fossil fuels. This is what is driving these things. And we also have livestock, also a major contributor to emissions. So the good thing is that human-induced climate change can be mitigated. That's a good thing. We can have right policies, we can have right innovations, we can have proper financing, and we can have also climate-resilient futures by doing something about it. It's not something that like, we cannot do anything about it. This is something. Maybe the natural process we cannot do much. But for the anthropogenic, this is where we fail. You can see in the graph there that things are moving up. It is not static. And it started in around 1960s, this kind of changes that we are talking about here. Why is that? It's because of industrialization and things of that nature. Human influence has been a very critical issue for that. I mean, the last 2,000 years we have had always some changes. As I said, it's becoming more and more difficult now. And it looks like there's a relationship between what humans do and what the natural processes are as well. Maybe it's because of building very many heavy houses, I don't know. But there's some kind of relationship from those graphs. Future annual emissions, we are expecting that it's going to increase, and this is some of the scenarios that people have done. This SSP5, that is where we have a fossil fuel development, where we are, to quote somebody in the country, drill, baby, drill. We drill, and use a lot of fossil fuels. Then we are going to get into such kind of situation. That is what the science is saying. Then we have SP2, that is a bit less, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go into that again. There are experts in the room. They can tell you what that SP1, SP2. SP1 is usually the best. It's very, very low emissions. That's what we will be looking for. But again, the thing is, and I can make you laugh here, because when we start thinking about the development that is required and what is happening with us, people are saying, let's not, let's go back to where it was before. And we cannot. This is another problem. So we need to look for other solutions. For example, we are now using very big ships to travel from place to place. In the old days, we didn't have to use any energy. Just with energy and we could move, but it takes too long. So you can agree with me, it took me one hour and 42 minutes to come here from Washington, D.C. If I was to walk or maybe be on a donkey or a horse, that would have been taken much longer. So we agree that we are in a situation where we need to really be, taking things that are there. So this is the kind of scenario, and we did a lot of today, so I'm not going to go too much into that. Africa is home to 1.5 billion people of the world's population, 18%. And it ranks among the most climate vulnerable regions on the earth. We will come back to that several times. It contributes only 3 to 4% of global emissions, but it bears the brunt. We have talked about that already. The warming up of 1 degree centigrade of warming has already happened in parts of Africa, and it is going to continue. We are losing land, and so on and so forth. I mean, loss of life. All these things are things that we are living with today. Most of the vulnerable nations are actually found in Africa. Africa is, again, I mean, this is something we have also talked about. Briefly, I will talk about here that the top green gas emitters of the world, you can see them, China, United States. What do they have in common? They are industrialized. they are producing much more. So look at the African countries in the picture. Maybe you cannot see too much, but I have South Africa, I have Thailand, Nigeria. Nigeria is Africa, Egypt, and so on and so forth. These African countries, they have almost little. The others are not even found in the picture because they are doing very little in terms of emissions. Still, they are bearing the brunt. And this is an ethical issue. It's a policy issue. It's an ethical issue. Many times when you go to African Union meetings, you hear Africans shouting, we want free money because you are the polluters and you are. These things are there. It's emotive, it's a normative topic, and I don't want to be. Again, I wanted to say, which I forgot to say in the beginning, that I'm not a Democrat, I'm not also a Republican. I'm just there. So in the politicals, I'm not playing there. But I think it's important to think about all these things that change. Politics change at time. And again, it brings to the point we had in the morning that it's important for us to really be able to have the science right. If we don't have the science right, it can affect us. These are the risks that we have been looking at throughout the day. I don't talk too much about them. But they are the signs of things going wrong, right? They are the signs of things going wrong. We can always relate to these things. Either it's a drought, either it's a flood, you name it. It's something that we can relate to. Now, the question that I want to ask is, does climate change predict the end of the age? Now, here I'm quoting a few things because I just wanted to spice this. And one was that Professor Otiso, he gave me some, I had already this slide, but he gave me the desire to bring it, to even make it stronger. Now, you can see here there are people who have been predicting things. One of the guys here is called Nostradamus, 16th century astrologer, who is actually not an astrologer. I would call him a soothsayer because astrology doesn't have to have a skull. But this guy is using a skull, so that's what I'm saying. He was an interesting guy. He has been talking to people are talking about it right now because of the war in Iran. There's been a lot of talk about Nostradamus as having predicted things. But actually, if you read the Bible, this for those who read these books, these famines, earthquakes in various places, they were actually predicted to happen at the end. I'm just trying to bring the scientists out of their closets. These things were to be there. So I don't know whether this is real or not. But also there's in the Revelation, which people don't like reading, there are 7 plagues that are talking about diseases, marine organisms dying, pollution of rivers and springs, sun-scorched men and women, sudden eclipse and pain, drying rivers, driving river efforts, thunder and earthquakes. These things are with us. They were predicted by these books. So I think it's critical for us to think deeply on whether there is some relationship between what we do as Christians, as Buddhists, as Muslims, and what the world is telling us. All right. What I want to say about this one is that the spiritual dimensions of climate change responses cannot be ignored. We cannot also ignore this thing, and I'll come back to this point later on. That we need to be able to really think about as a social fabric. How do we make sure? And I think Professor Otiso mentioned again. He said something like changing mindset. How do you change people's mindsets? You can only change people's mindset by ensuring that you touch what their belief system, their cultural systems, what are they believing in? So this is something we cannot ignore because it is important. It can help us to get the message across. So we have seen these things. This slide. The reason for this slide is really to show you that there are different shades of problems that people go through. West Africa, there's a lot of issues of sea level rise, and so on. Spread of malaria, in Southern Africa where there was no malaria before, it's coming up, and so on. So there are things that are changing. Coral bleaching that's happening in many parts of the world. Deforestation. Again, some of this is human, but some of this is also because of the interrelationship between the climate change effects and so on. We need to be aware about this thing. Africa is warming also faster than the global average because it has traditionally been very hot, right? And this has implications on certain things, right? Global warming is increasing. We have had 1.1 degrees centigrade warming since pre-industrial times. That is global. Africa is warming at 1.2 to 1.5 degrees centigrade. So it's worse. And somebody told us today that it's not just about, feeling the heat. It is what you see in crops. Crops sometimes they just dry up. They cannot, like tea. Somebody was made the question. The example used was about tea. That tea cannot survive 1 degree more or something like that. Okay, so there are things, and then there could be fish inside there, and other things. So this dryness that is happening, most of it is related to this warming. Temperature changes. Again, this is something. The regional hospital. There's a particular part of the world, Horn of Africa. There are issues there. Western equatorial regions, and so on and so forth. These are areas we look as hotspots where we expect things could go wrong. But we have many parts of sub-Saharan Africa that have these kind of problems. And of course, we're also getting now low minimum temperatures in areas like Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia during the winters. So all these things, for me, I would say, and then of course flood risks and so on, I would say that this is not something to make us discouraged or lose hope, I would say so. And I hope that at the end of the day we can see some hope by the time I'm through with this. Because the frequency is coming in, but somebody say that when you are given a lemon, what do you do with it? You eat it? You squeeze into a lemonade. So this is the kind of thing we need to think about. What can we do with this kind of situation? Right, so the floods have been increasing. Nigeria has, these are facts, 1.4 million displaced in 2022. This thing is moving by itself. Sudan and South Sudan, seasonal floods are coming all the time. We talked about today about Lake Victoria, seasonal floods, things are happening all the time. But as I said, it's not only there, it's Europe, it's other places also, if that is any consolation for Africans. But I think at the end of the day, we need to solve our own problems. Increasing precipitation is happening in different places. Under those kind of scenarios, what do we do with this one? We have places that are really suffering. We talk about Mozambique. Today we had Mozambique. Many, many countries. We have somebody showing about Nairobi, the floods in the city, and so on and so forth. Somebody said we could actually have done something of that by unplugging the manholes and so on and so forth. So this, I think the story is coming out very, very clear that we are going to have more places getting wetter, other places, and others are going to have increased drought risk. Question is, what are we going to do about that? So again, impacts of climate change just on Africa, a few things just to go a bit deeper, and then we'll be stopping. I know you already have a lot of questions to ask. I believe so. So we are just going to look at these impacts and then try to see if there are some solutions to this. So we have impacts, big ones on food security and agriculture, impacted by drought, lack of water. Ecosystems and natural resources are really going down. Economies of livelihoods, and so on. We also even have things like immigration in Madagascar. People actually moving from one particular corner of the world to another one because of they want to go to a better place in one country. I've seen that myself. So climate change is not only an environmental crisis, it is a driver of displacement and development challenges across vulnerable regions. Not to mention, of course, people trying to get livelihood in Europe and so on and so forth, where they think is better. Climate change is reshaping Africa's water systems for sure, and we will be seeing more altered runoff patterns. We'll be seeing more evapotranspiration shifts, and we're also going to be we are going to see groundwater depletion because of impossibility of recharging this water if the rain is not there. And in many places, groundwater is a primary and often the only drinking and irrigation source for rural communities across sub-Saharan Africa. So it's important protect this as well. The water scarcity will be more in Sahel, South Africa, and Horn of Africa, and it will threaten a lot of food security issues. Where we have more rainfall, again, we have the floods. I'm pushing this a bit more because I want to really look at these two things. Why is the flood a problem? Why is the drought a problem at the same time, in a same region sometimes? Then impacts of unsafe drinking water on health. These are issues that could be very costly for governments. And also it affects the water infrastructure and also leading to water scarcity. I know of countries where the water scarcity is also political, but these things happen. But in our case, we are seeing Africa falling short of the MDG to get proper water accessibility. Climate change poses serious concerns, spread of diseases, malaria, dengue fever, Rift Valley fever. These are things now that are moving in places where they weren't not there before. And we are also seeing a lot of deaths happening in these places. Biodiversity is quite impacted in many areas, with Africa hosting quite a number of the wild mammal, bird and plant species. Yields are collapsing. We have less and less yield from rain-fed regions because most of the time, and this is something that I can talk from my own village, because when I was growing up, it was very rare to get a full, most of the time you plant and you are not sure you are going to harvest. But the question was, people continue planting year in, year out, because that's what the farmer does. So we need to think about how do we change this kind of situation. With this rise of erratic rainfalls, we'll also have issues of mycotoxins that affect the harvest. So again, really nowhere to run. And of course, this is reflected in stunting child development. The rising temperature will continue stressing, crop viability and livestock productivity. And we need to be ready to harness these things, right? Because agriculture is the backbone of Africa's primary economic activity. So as we gather today thinking about what to do, we need to know that with accelerated evaporation rates which happen to dry things even faster, is there a solution for this? Can something be done? There is, I think somebody was talking about, was that today about a bit of this declining African fisheries and what happens. We can see also a lot of decline in fisheries across the board. In catches, some of this is because of overfishing, somebody would say so. But the thing with climate change and all these effects, it masks the things that we need to do. So fisheries management sometimes is lazy or not able to do something because, it's climate change. Sometimes it makes it very difficult to really put in a proper action plan to ensure that we get things right. Fish is a nutrition source. Somebody has mentioned it again today. We have fish is one thing that Africans depend upon so much. We were joking with it, I think, with Professor Nimi today about Nigeria being a country that is eating fish in every food, every plate there's fish. But Nigeria doesn't have enough, fish to eat because they have to import most of these things. They cannot have enough from their own lakes and rivers and the ocean. So these are things that are real for people to look at. Climate change is reshaping fish stocks and community resilience. Again, this is something that it has been shown, some papers have written this, that warming oceans are driving fish away from the tropical countries to cooler places, to higher latitude areas. And therefore, that's something, again, that needs to be, we need to be aware of, because it is going to affect a lot of people. Coral reef collapse is one of the things that will affect a lot of people as well. Then we have other issues like mangrove losses that we also need to think about. Again, this is something that has been blamed on aquaculture and other things that people do. But in fact, there's also a lot of effect on climate change, as we know. So all these are things these are things that are very, very difficult to just ignore, because somehow our responsibility is, as scientists in this room, is to see what we can do to change the situation. Coastal erosion is a big issue. The World Bank, where I work, we have spent a lot of money trying to mitigate and adapt communities to this kind of thing. So it's a big issue. Now I want to talk about the area that is close to my heart. That is what I was trying to do, and that's what I'm employed to do actually at the bank. Aquaculture. I think aquaculture has a role to play, in changing some of the narratives that we are seeing here. It's one of the sources of animal protein in many African countries, and it is the fastest growing sector globally. It has issues that are affected. I mean, climate change issues, rising temperature, erratic rainfall, droughts also affect this, flood and extreme events with fish kills and all that. But still, it is the area that has more, hope for us. Fish supply shocks. We have a lot of these, devastating issues also affecting aquaculture. Escape of farmed fish species, for example. I mean, John and I'm sure John is looking at me because of, even Les might also not remember this, that we had a station where we periodically were losing all the fish. These are scientific, it was a research station, but we were basically losing most of the fish during floods until we figured out what to do with this. So it's a serious problem. But still, that is what will support so many millions of people, and therefore it is important to see at what kind of things can be done for it. So this is a problem we need to be looking at. Some fish farms have been destroyed. For example, in Nigeria, 70% of fish farms were destroyed in the flood of 2022. 33 out of the 36 states were actually affected, with a big loss of USD 1.2 to 1.5 billion, both for agriculture and fisheries. So it's not a trivial thing. It's something that affects farmers. When a farmer loses this amount of money on that scale, it's very difficult for that farmer to come back and continue farming. So these are really issues that we need to look at. The same has been reported in quite a few other countries as well. Okay. We also have seen a lot of reported events increasing over time of disasters in Africa. Many people are affected of this, and it is going on and on and on. Therefore, it's important for us as scientists to think about solutions on what can we do to ensure that we get things right. So without decisive action, Africa faces the future of intensifying climate disruption with profound consequences for food, water, and livelihoods. We need to start looking for ways of reducing that warming trajectory, even if it's on a small scale. Again, it's a wider problem. What we can do, what we can affect, we need to do it. We can also look at how we can do the reforms in the pastoral and smallholder systems as well. Then we also need to think about food and water risk. How do we ensure that our decline in yield is stopped, that we can now move up? How do we ensure that we can reduce displacement of people because of climate change issues? Right? So it is something that affects, is unequally burdens on quite a number of people. Again, we need to be aware that it's not just one side fits all. We need to think about solutions that can work across the board. We have, and we are going to pick the next few slides on the opportunities that we have in Africa. we have possibilities. Pathway to equitable climate action. We can have targeted support, inclusive policies there. We can talk about affordable solutions. And we can also see how we can transition from very high carbon footprint activities to low carbon economies. That we can do. So let's look at a bit about the opportunities that that present themselves and the pathways to climate resilience in Africa. There are 3 priorities areas that I would say we need to look at. Number 1 is to think about improved water productivity. We have talked about monitoring a lot in the morning, that monitoring is very important. Yeah, we need to monitor insights to scale so that we can bring in more climate smart irrigation. We can look at water efficient production systems. We have done quite a lot of work at the World Bank on these areas of promoting precision irrigation, integrating aquaculture into agriculture systems, and also use of water-saving technologies. We need also to move from monitoring to decision support systems. Beyond data collection, we need to think about decision-making tools for farmers, planners, and policymakers. Somebody was mentioning this thing of data in the morning, but I think even that, as that presentation was being made, I was asking myself, we monitor, but why do we monitor? We need to monitor for action, not just to monitor, because sometimes it's like that gentleman who was giving an example was, oh, you have been trying to get data from me, but what are you doing with it? So I think it's critical that we monitor, but we always think about what is this about? Because as scientists, normally when we collect data, it's an end in itself. We publish our work and then we are happy. But in the actual fact, it is very important to think about how that data that we are collecting can change societies. This is a challenge for all of us. I mean, I moved from fisheries, from Kemfrey, where I was with Okechi. I went to the fisheries department. Why did I do that? I wanted to see if I can influence things a bit better. I realized that it's not easy. Even when Kemfrey was very efficient. They have the money. If they get the money, they will do the thing, right? But then I went to the fisheries department, which is, I thought, okay, from here I can decide where the money goes, but I can also do some bit of work. The money wasn't that much, okay? So I went to World Fish, where it was still a scientific thing, but on a bigger scale. Then went to the World Bank and I said, yeah, this is the right place because I can influence the science. I can also influence what happens with it because of the countries that depend on us. Anyway, the bottom line is that we need to think about everything that we do needs to be related with some kind of action plan. The third thing that we need to be looking at is how we can integrate water and groundwater governance. We need to think about how we can strengthen agriculture, the links between agriculture, aquaculture, and water management. Many a times, these things don't look at each other. They don't talk to each other at all. I remember when I came to the World Bank, this is a story I think is important to illustrate this thing. There was a group called ProBlue, which was looking at marine waters issues, and then there was another group called ProGreen, which is looking at landscape. So when I read the landscape mission for the ProGreen, they were talking about making sure that landscapes are integrated and all that. Then I went to the guy and said, oh, but you have landscape. Can you give me money so that I can do something we're calling it integrating aquaculture into land and seascape programs. That's what I wanted to do. This guy said, no, I can't give you money. What are you talking about? You're going to make my life very complicated. I said, no, I'm not here to make your life complicated. Give me money. I want to integrate these things. So I realized that though they are saying landscape, they are not thinking about maybe fisheries as part or aquaculture as part of the landscape. So you can see in an institution like that one that has all these people in one place, it is still very difficult to convince people. So that is where we are. But again, as I said, it is not something to be worried about. I think there are quite a number of resources that we can use to get this right. I believe that investment in water productivity, satellite monitoring, and groundwater management is essential to sustain agriculture and rural livelihoods across the continent of Africa. if we can be seeing each other, not silo mentality, but if we can look at these investments as a wholesome thing. There are 5 pillars of climate readiness that we can also look at. There are issues of policy frameworks that need to be integrated. At the bank, we talk a lot about the NDC, the National Determined Contribution, that go with climate change. We believe that those NDCs should be aligned to real things that happen on the ground, so that people can measure and say, okay, this was what we promised, this is what we have done. And therefore, that alignment would be very important, because one of the things that we do again, if things are not written in our strategic plans, they never usually happen. Sometimes when they get to that strategic plan, they might happen. But if not written, normally nothing happens. We also need to think about strategic climate smart investments. Investment in infrastructure will be critical, just as investment in climate smart agriculture and aquaculture, of course. And there are also another element there that is important: nature-based solutions. We have solutions that are nature-based. I will probably mention a few of those as we go on, which could help us to do these things. And of course, we need to think about low emission contribution. Low emission systems, we need to think about that. How we can leverage carbon markets and also the risking of finance, especially because most of the private sector do not want to invest in a place where there is already climate change issues. Again, just to make it clear, we need to build systems for scale. Data, information, digital tools, all these things are not artifacts. They're supposed to be used to help us to do things better. Science is a big solution that we need to be looking at. We need to understand the problem properly. We need to also to be able to innovate. We need also to be able to scale. And so infrastructure issues need to be in place. And we also need to have data to make things work. We have had a lot of challenges in all these areas, of course, from this morning. But the reality is that if we can get more water-efficient systems, for example, we will be solving a very big problem that faces the continent and also the world as well. We have systems. In aquaculture, for example, we have systems that can help us to produce fish even in a place where there is a lot of challenges with evaporation, for example. So aquaculture can be a big solution in more than one way. I'm coming back to this topic. And you will see why I don't want to delve too much on it, but you will see why I'm bringing this thing back. It's good for food security. It is also very low on carbon footprint. And it is also good for the economies, especially in the rural areas. Aquaculture production in Africa, some countries in Africa has been, we have a we have very high producers and low ones. We can learn from each other. This is the point here that I want to bring, so that we can bring everybody on board. In some cases, aquaculture is the only thing we can get. We can get our fish from. Look here, shrimps, for example. The red one is all aquaculture. The other part is what we can get from capture fisheries. These are some of the species that we looked at in a particular report. The World Bank has identified actually aquaculture as one big activity in our changing wealth of the changing wealth of nations. We have been in 2024. We actually looked at aquaculture and say, is this something that can help, especially African countries with the protein requirements and so on? We produced this book, this report, Harnessing the Waters, $1 trillion investment opportunity in sustainable aquaculture. It was not actually just about harnessing the waters, but also to see how this goes into aquaculture. I've given that those QR codes there for anybody who wants to pick. I'll give you 1 second or two. You can download that. But this presentation will also be available. Now, in that report, we also showed that by investing properly, we can increase the food production in very easy ways. Some of the countries that I mentioned here in these upside scenario markets, we are seeing that there are some emerging markets that would benefit from aquaculture that are not doing anything with the water. I feel, because of my background as an aquaculture person, which is also related to agriculture, whatever water we have, we need to harness it and use it properly. So in this scenario, we said we can increase, by 255 million metric tons more from aquaculture. But it depends on issues of investment. How we invest will matter on how much we can harness this opportunity. Africa is the area, is the frontier for this actually, because of the fact that there's enough water, there's a lot of water still. We also have the sea, which has not been very much used. Aquaculture has very low carbon footprint compared with other cattle and other food production elements. Another thing that I want to introduce here is the effect of seaweed. Seaweed is something we have worked a lot at the bank. I'm bringing this one out here because we showed in our report that we could grow the value of seaweed by 11.8 billion by 2030 US dollars by focusing on at least 10 applications. Here we have biostimulants which are affecting agriculture. Actually, quite a number of these actually affect agriculture. So we could use seaweed to actually help agriculture. Biostimulants is one of the things that we can use to replace, for example, the fossil fuels driven fertilizers. Animal feed additives as part of it. We can also, look at methane additives as well. I'll come back to this methane thing in a moment, because we have seen in some other jurisdiction that there's a seaweed species that can be used to lower emissions from livestock by a very big margin, over 90%, just by giving only 2% of the diet being seaweed. So it is quite something that can really help. For Africa, this is Aspergillus armata taxiformis is not an African species, but we have quite a number of species within the continent that we are now looking at as useful to help lower the emissions from livestock. We have opportunity to farm. We have a lot of area. If you see there those big, bubbles, that is where the seaweed is being done. Africa is almost untouched. Tanzania is one that is doing something, but it's still a dot. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well that we can look at. We have over 55 countries that are bordering the sea, and they can be used for that. We have opportunities to mitigate greenhouse gases by renewable energy, which we spoke about today, a lot of that. We can, of course, reduce methane emissions through seaweed, but we also can we can do a lot of adaptation by focusing on reducing vulnerability to climate impacts that come because of use of poor farming methods and so on. So in a nutshell, if we can strengthen our community institutions and diversify livelihoods using these mitigation measures, we would be doing well for Africa. We can also enhance disaster preparedness. I think we talked about monitoring earlier on. Some of my friends did that in the morning. Nature-based solutions are critical for us in Africa because they are cheaper to do. It's not like other solutions. Policy and investment needs. We have this is basically focusing on the World Bank and how much we have been spending on financing. 3.17 billion was used in climate financing in 2022. We are increasing that support. We're also looking at technology transfer. We have a very elaborate system on South-South cooperation. We also have, we are looking at regional cooperation and how we can integrate policy into national development plans. We help the countries to think about their frameworks. We are calling country partnership framework, and also to strengthen local governance. So this is something that the bank has been doing a lot, regardless of whether there are changes in government. I think this is something we are looking at. Globally, there is a lot of money being spent. I want to say that there is no lack of funds, although this figure says there's been a lull, yes, because of many issues, but the climate agenda has not died. It is still alive. And I think it's important that we take the momentum. As you can see on the graph on the right, that in fact there is increase in funding. It might dip a bit, but it is at a high level still. So we can harness the science to tackle climate change challenges for sure. We can leverage indigenous knowledge, which is a vital component of climate adaptation strategies. We can learn a lot. There's many examples. Some of my colleagues did examples already. I end up with a few good examples that we can work on. For example, climate-smart agriculture. We have been doing this in Kenya. Some projects that are looking at this. We have the Zai technology, which has been worked a lot in the West African countries, where planting is done in pits. So again, that looks like trivial, but it has worked very well, and it's been adopted in quite a number of countries as well. We have issues of renewable energy expansion. We can do that. I think Africa has a lot of opportunities. We saw this today, geothermal. We also know that, of course, there's a lot of solar, as you can see. So we have solutions in the continent that we can definitely use to help us. We also have quite a number of technologies that we can look at. I mean, again, this is an example of solar-powered pumps that are being used in many parts of the world. They are very reliable, especially if you are just going to be using for pumping. You don't have to save the energy if you are going to be doing it during the day. So these are things that can work in rural areas where there is maybe very little else. Fog harvesting, again, it can also give water to some extent. These are things that people are working with. In Morocco, for example, it has been worked. In parts of the Middle East, they're actually trying to harvest the clouds and so on. So these are things that are there. There might be debatable, how big are they or not, but is there drip irrigation, very efficient, and also use of aquaponics and aeroponics to help be more efficient with the water use. We have this, I'm showing you this, this is Ghana, this is most likely a Kenyan thing. I think most of my examples will be Kenyan now from now henceforth, just to reveal where I come from. But what I'm saying is, we can, instead of doing what we've been doing before, we can look at the soil and say, this soil requires so much fertilizer. We don't have to just, give soil, because there's NPK in the market, you go and buy and throw it. We need to start thinking, giving the right amount of fertilizer, because then that is more efficient for climate. It's also good for the pocket. Sun culture is a Kenyan thing. As I said it's all about Kenya. I don't, a few slides and then I'm done. Sun culture is very fascinating story of some young people that have been using solar pumps to increase agriculture productivity. The reports are very nice. 75% of the farmers using these solar pumps, they have reported they have realized higher production without planting additional land. So that is quite good. We don't need more land. We can actually reforest some of the land if need be, because we can get more from the land we have. And income can increase 5 times in this case. Very, very nice reports that have come from this from this group. Africa is another group that has impacted 5 million farmers across Africa. I think it also came from Kenya, but it has been all over Africa anyway. Sorry for my examples to be where I come from, but it's okay. So this is called the Bima Pima. It is some sort of insurance that farmers are using, and they are reporting very good results, as you can see there. Very good impact as well. So use agricultural data. Let's use agricultural data to produce maps, farmer registries, project dashboards, climate advisories, and market focus. This data should not be like what my friend was saying, just collecting for the sake of it. Let's use the data that we have, because that is the only resource that can really help us to make a change in the country. And we have mobile phones. Everybody has one. We can actually do it. And then the other thing that I want to bring here is that we don't need to leave anyone behind. There's been a very big debate on some are anti-climate, some are for climate, and so on and so forth. But I think at the end of the day, the world is for all of us. We need to bring in everybody that can do something. Let them do it. I was actually imagining, some of the things, getting religious people to come and talk to their communities about, after the sermon, they should be able to speak about climate change because they understand it. So I think one of the things that we need to be doing much more is talking to the right people, make it a move to speak. I am very sure that we can do it. I remember the presentation on the advisories that have been moving like wildfire. I think Ted was showing that. That's something we can use as a vehicle to tell people about what they're doing. I mean, we have these ambassadors everywhere. Can we give them the right tools so that they can speak for us? The key takeaways, as I wind up, I would want to say that rising temperatures are here with us, of course, unless we do something. But because these are long-term things, it might mean that we have to do other things that can help us to adapt. Mitigation measures need to continue, but we also need to think about how we can adapt. Climate is intensifying. Food security will continue unless we take action. The fisheries ecosystems and coastal communities will continue facing these things. Again, there will be more pressure from warming ocean and habitat loss, except we can upscale some of the technologies that we have had today. This one is running away. Africa, and I'm not talking to the African people here, contributes 3 to 4% of global emissions. We have spoken about that since morning. Yet remains one of the most climate vulnerable globally. I am saying this in red, that we should stop whining and we should start thinking about solutions, because we whine a lot, and sometimes, people have developed and all that, but there are many ways of that we have seen today that can help us if we take the right action. It could also mean, of course, lobbying for money, but I think if we approach it, for example, the bank is spending a lot of money on these things. I think the biggest challenge that I see is that because of a lack of proper science percolated to the people, when the money goes there, it doesn't go with the science. And so many of the projects that would have brought a difference end up not succeeding because they have not been supported well. So I think that is an area that we can take action upon, ensuring that the right technologies are available for the people. Mitigation and adaptation, these are things we need to be focusing on. Low emission systems need to be there. We need to focus more on renewables, methane reduction, blue carbon issues and so on, low carbon footprint activities. We need to be looking at infrastructure that can be climate resilient. There's no point of building something that will collapse tomorrow because you are trying to save some money. It's better that we go for really good systems that work. Then also we need to think about communities. Again, without people involvement in these things, people who understand what is happening, it's going to be very difficult for us to succeed. It is important for us to continue integrating science, technology, and local innovations to drive resilience of communities. Then let's not leave the policymakers out. So policy frameworks need to be, we need to have strong policy frameworks. We need to have proper climate finance. We need to think about how we can transfer technology faster. My World Bank president says something very interesting, and I think I'll steal what he said and give it to you. He says, he told us as bankers, that we should steal shamelessly. When it comes to technology, we should not leave any barriers. We should steal that technology. If you see something working in place, let's have it work in other. This is what we have been told. And I think it's a good idea. All these technologies that are happening in one corner, we need to create that momentum for them to be available everywhere else, so that people can make use of these things instead of them reinventing the wheel all the time. I will stop there. Thank you very much again. I want to really, really appreciate everybody.
Thank you. Testing. Thank you, Dr. Charo Karisa, for this insightful and
Is funny. Anyway, I wanted to talk a bit more so that I have less time for questions. But I have still 30 minutes. Anyway, please. Yeah.
Okay. You talked about the end of the age sign,
Yes.
and you give some examples here, but you missed one thing.
Mm-hmm.
What does the Quran says about the end of the end sign? Anyway, forget about that.
I can answer you. Anyway, let's go.
Okay, in your presentation, you are focusing on increasing productivity. It means we should produce more fish. But sometimes Africa, the issue is not production. The issue is marketing. For example, I can give an example in Tanzania with the program they call it Global 20,000, something like that. We produced a lot of corn, and there was no market. The farmers stopped producing corn for 3 years because they have corn in their stores. So increasing on the production without developing the market, I think it may also be a problem.
Okay, that's all, eh? So the Quran one, I will not read because you don't want an answer, so I won't. I'll drop that. But I will say, I mean, for the issue of Tanzania and the maize that you produced and you are not able to sell, I think you have very hungry neighbors, right? I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, I'll make it more, but Kenya is just there. They can't have enough maize. I think Africa, but that's a very important point because Africa has one big problem. We are not. It's not a market issue. It's not that we don't have the market. It is the connections that we are lacking. The connections, because many a times people overproduce in one part of the continent instead of battering it. We don't do that. So I mean, it's quite a horrible thing to think like that. But at a small scale, yes, I agree with you. We need to think about the market at a small scale. But I mean, if you look at a continental wide, we have no problem of market. There's always enough need for that maize. I give an example. Aquaculture, which I mentioned, which you touched again, is now booming, is increasing. I talked about 255 million metric tons that will be produced if we focus on aquaculture. That is all food. But that food depends on things like you're talking about maize, availability of maize. Do you know soybeans and things like that? So what we are producing in one country surely should be able to do a lot of wonders. I mean, I used to stay in Egypt. We are importing soybeans all the way from where? And maize as well from the US. To feed what? To feed fish and other animals. So basically, that's something can be done at a policy. It's a very nice policy thing to start thinking about if Tanzania can produce so much good maize. Kenya is always trying to do many things. You know, we eat ugali. Someone was mentioning ugali in the morning. That is the thing that keeps them alive. So we can solve these issues together.
Very nice talk. I enjoyed it a lot, especially the things that you did with fish and seaweeds, because I thought you gave a very nice run through of what was going on. I had two questions. One of it is everything that all countries are supposed to do is to follow the UN SDGs. One of the things that's sort of lacking in Africa is how do you align and sort of justify that you're, succeeding in meeting the sustainable development goals of humans or land or whatever. So all of this requires a lot of data, and you spoke, pretty extensively about remote sensing and all of the data. But we don't have data on people, at that scale at which these decisions are being made. So, there are so many problems with regard to lack of data for people and the social factors. So I want you to comment about planning and mitigation, all of these things across spatial scales, and also the alignment with SDGs, with some of the things that you said. I know it's easy, but how do you do it?
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot. You are saying you're a professor?
Yes.
Professor who?
At Boston University. Work with less.
Okay. So, no, thanks a lot.
Necessarily enhance your standing.
Okay, I work with John.
Anyway, no, thanks a lot for that. I mean, I think the issue of how we can ensure that we have the right data, that is a perennial problem, right? It's a big issue, and I think it's because we do not know the value of data for development. It could also be a problem with science, again, because we collect the data, we don't really necessarily go back to say what the findings are. I would think that one way is to do this is to reform the way we do things as scientists. This is now our own issue as scientists. When we are collecting data, we need to think about getting back to those people who have given you the data to tell them this is what I found. In fact, I could say that no data should be collected if there will be no effort to talk to policymakers about that data. I mean, these things are spoken here and there. We speak about them all the time, but we are not deliberate to do it, such that when data has been collected, you write your papers, but by the time the project is ending, you didn't even budget to go around the places you collect the data to show people what it was about you are doing. So I think that's something that's very important. And it also ties to the SDGs, because if you don't measure something, you will never know that you're actually succeeding. So we need to think about how we can collect data. I mean, we are suffering everywhere. It's not one corner. It's everywhere, because we don't spend as much resources on it. But also the other thing is, if we could show the value of our data to government, it would be much easier for us to entice the government, because actually what I've found out is that the governments are the ones who have the money. I can talk from the World Bank where I work. When we are giving grant, for example, a country like India, we give them a grant from ProBlue, where ProBlue is a multi-donor trust fund. We give them maybe $5 million against maybe $500 million that they have borrowed. So I'm giving you how different these things, where the money is. So governments can do that, but they need to know that when that data is collected, it will bring immediate change to them. I would say so. There was another gentleman there who had a hand up. His hand up.
I saw hands here and then
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. Wonderful talk.
Thank you.
I understand this to be, mainly a scientific forum, so it makes a lot of sense that you would focus on things we can do as scientists. But I think the so-called white elephant in the room is the governance structures that we have across the 54 countries in Africa. Some of the food insecurity that we see on the continent today is because of political conflicts in Sudan, in Somalia, in Mali, in Chad, places that have tremendous food insecurity today. It's not because we can't grow crops in Sudan, it's because of the political situation there. So I wanted to see if you could address how governance structure impacts what the World Bank is trying to accomplish, number one. And then number two, a totally unrelated subject, we've gone through the entire day without mentioning artificial intelligence and how this is impacting how the world is evolving. How is that paradigm going to impact food security, climate change, everything of that sort on the continent of Africa?
Okay, so AI and governance. Thank you very much. Look, I don't want to agree completely with you. That's good. Because I don't think it's just about lack of war that causes these things. It's a much deeper thing, because if that was true, every other place that has been enjoying peace for a long time, they would be flourishing. But that's not happening, right? And you know it. You know yourself that it's not true. So I think there is a place for governance in all countries that we need to reform, right? Somebody said that politicians are very selfish, but that is good. It's good that they are selfish, because then you can go to them knowing, the messaging must be right. Number one, I think that's number one. It's the messaging to these people must be the right message, because they are selfish. You can appeal to that selfishness to change how they are thinking. I know that's easier said than done, but I think we need to think about how do you craft a message that resonates with these people that need to make the decisions, right? So, there's one side of not trying at all, which I think is the most happening, but sometimes the messaging that comes there is also not the right message to help people to really change. So I think that is the issue of governance. True, we have seen wars that are very devastating, but even those wars are also caused by wrong governance system, right? It's all related. So I think we need to think about reforming the whole paradigm. Shifting the way we think, the way people think about the external world as well. I think it's important to start shifting, their mindset about certain things. I can talk on a personal level. Seeing, for example, the African Union. Let me make it a bit, bad. Rub the wounds. Why would the African Union be depending on the EU for funding their own programs? So it is a wrong thinking. Thinking that you are poor when you are actually very rich. You have all these minerals and all these things, all the water and so on and so forth. When I was a director of fisheries in Kenya, I decided to, and don't tell them, but what I said is this. I said, Kenya must start fishing for themselves. What was happening is people were coming asking for license from Europe, Japan, and other places, right? You give them the license, they go and fish, and then when you say, how much have you caught? Because I want to put my data, they tell you, no, I did not catch anything. Year in, year out, they never caught nothing. I said, no, it can't be. Why are you giving me this money if you're not catching nothing? So in a way, I'm just saying that we need to think differently. And that's why I said stop whining. Because many a times we think that our solutions must be from another person or another. This is their fault. Yeah, it might be their fault, but we are the ones suffering. Do something. So I think this is what I would say. AI, I didn't mention it purposely. I've been using it a lot. But it's a part of the technology. As far as I'm concerned, it's all technology. The kind of AI I use, sometimes it lies to me. It doesn't tell me the truth all the time. So I'm a bit skeptical. It's changing. It should change. Because if it doesn't, people are becoming lazier and lazier, and therefore it's very easy for us to be misled, misinformed. Because one thing that it does, and I've said in my own thing, when I write something, then I ask, can you tell me about this? It goes back to my notes and tells, oh, this is what it is. I said, no, but this is what I wrote. I want something more. So I think we have to we have to be careful. I don't think we need to just be looking at that alone. I think there are many other ways of helping ourselves. Is that Leslie's hand?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. John can wait. Anyway.
Well, mine is, just to react to your answer to Suj about, data and maybe scientific outputs gathering some dust on the shelves, and you say these ones are not being related maybe to policymakers and the like. But I want to say that may not be really 100% true. Okay. All of us as we are seated here, we know what is happening, like in some quarters where anything science is being condemned. Even from the very, very crucial topic we are deliberating here, it's like, science cannot, there's nothing from science that is informing climate change. That vaccines, things which have been proven for many, many years, and this is science, that vaccines don't work. You shouldn't vaccinate your kids with smallpox and all this. And was still institutions which have taken many, many, many years to put in place, both globally and even in some countries. They are being dismembered overnight. The personnel who have done really fantastic jobs in these places and with many years of experience and training, they are being rendered redundant. So I think is both ways. Data may not be failed, but at times, even when it is being failed, nothing is being done with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. I'll answer very quickly, and I'll tell you what I said earlier on. I said I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. So I'm happy that I did that earlier on. But to be honest, I think we need to look at both sides, really, seriously, and this is a serious answer to your question. We need to look at both sides. Because, again, the motto is don't leave anybody behind who has issues. What are we doing as scientists to help them understand? Right? I know it could affect you, but sometimes I look at as a scientist as a crusader, somebody who wants to change things, not necessarily because things are good. You are a messenger. You're almost like a journalist because you're going to speak what you have found. And sometimes that can be difficult. But I think if we can still learn how to package things, I can give examples, but I'm sure we don't have too much time for that. But I think sometimes resilience of the scientist is required to keep speaking the same thing over and over again until people understand what it is. There is possibility to do that. One good example is why we wrote the Harnessing the Waters report. It was because we wanted to address people not understanding aquaculture. So we put that report in. Because we wanted to show, aquaculture is not only about shrimp mangrove cutting, it is also about climate change, low carbon footprint, those kind of things we were putting in that paper, that report. Thanks.
All right. It's on. Yeah, I don't know what Okechi was talking about, but I'll move on to my comment. So thank you for your talk. I think I cannot make one comment and see whether the World Bank is actually putting money there. And to me, if I was thinking of how to deal with Africa's food crisis and food security, it comes down to transcontinental railways. Africa does not have any navigable river. So in the hierarchy of transportation, it is water transport, then railways, then roads, then air. So we all know that the colonial railways in Africa are on different gauges. They don't even interconnect. So I don't know what the bank is doing as a matter of very, very urgent priority to actually develop and help develop transcontinental railways. We do transcontinental railways in Africa. Much of what we are talking here will be taken care of.
Okay, no, thanks a lot for that question. I think infrastructure is a big thing for us. Connectivity, that's a big. We spend a lot of money on that. There's something that I mentioned very briefly, but maybe didn't come out very strongly because it was not intended to. I mentioned what we call country partnership framework. That thing is what is killing many African countries. Why? Because this is an agreement between World Bank and the country. So, and then that thing is usually for maybe 5 years, 10 years time period. The problem is if you don't emphasize something in your CPF, what do you call it, there's no way to get money into that thing unless you write it in. So the manager will look, oh, CPF doesn't allow this thing. So we are the ones who should really know where to put our monies. I mean, I have examples. For example, when I was writing a project in Vietnam, the Vietnamese government said, you are giving us money only for infrastructure. You not spend our money going for meetings, our aquaculture money. No, we are going to put infrastructure. We want to have this gabion created here and so on and so forth. We need that road there. We need to market our things. So they put pressure on the bank. This is what we want. They put it in there, they are the kings, actually. But if you don't put that, if you don't fight to put that thing in there, forget it. I mean, a country like Nigeria, they have been talking about lack of fish, 1.4 million tons deficit. Their CPF doesn't have, and I was there working as a 2018 is when I went there, and I left 2020. Today, they still have the same. They have not had any money from AFDB, not from the World Bank, from anybody. They're just stuck there. I said, why? They never touch it. Last week, just to give you details, they sent the CPF draft for us to review. There was no mention of fish. And I know they need it. So I said, please, can you put it there? I don't know. I hope they'll put it. So what I'm saying is, we are, again, the ones who need to prioritize our things we want to do and look for the money for it. Money, as I showed you, for this money, there's a lot of money. I don't think money is a problem. Yeah.
That Les and then Mark ask your questions in turn, and then we will wrap up.
Okay.
Thanks.
You can address them both.
Okay. If they don't make them too convoluted.
Okay, yeah. No, go fast.
Okay.
Charo, one thing I just want to mention is that there are many forms of AI, and one of the tremendous breakthroughs is that we can use machine learning of one form or another to predict what's going to happen with pretty good accuracy without understanding why it's working.
Okay.
Ultimately, we want to know the mechanism, but that's the long route. If you just want to get an answer, AI can help give us answers that we don't understand, but are nonetheless correct. Okay, anyway, here's my question. Charo, can we increase fish production to the point, sustainably, to the point that the people who can only afford millet now can actually have protein in their diet? That's the thing, because it costs so much to produce fish. And it's really hard to bring the cost down. And wild capture has hit the floor. So is it possible to achieve equity in aquaculture?
Okay.
Second question coming.
All right.
I think the second, the issue that I've been thinking about all day today during these presentations is around land policy. As you were talking about policy frameworks, what we haven't talked about yet in this symposium is the necessity of the security of tenure of smallholders in rural and peri-urban areas so that they can invest and hold on to their assets in the face of land grabbing and dispossession of land. So what are your thoughts about the importance of security of land ownership under customary or statutory systems?
Okay, there are only those two questions. Okay, thanks. So Les first and then Mark later. Yeah, the AI can take it. I mean, I've just been whining on my own things because I want to write an email, doesn't give me the ask a question, I have to read again and find, that was my problem. But machine learning, yes, I think this is a big breakthrough. It does things very quick. So, but the only thing is that you still need to check. Even if that answer you are saying is right, you still need to check it. And that might be an issue for some of us if you become lazy and you want to move quickly. But the question of cost of production, it's very difficult to know exactly why these things are difficult for some places. I can give an example, for example, carp, this carp group of species that do not need anything to eat, I mean, they eat very low. The low input things, right? I mean, we talk about labeo. When I look at China, they have been big on that, and India. They are big producers, and this is the bulk of what they are producing. Question is, why are we not seeing that happen in other places? We are insisting nowadays, actually, and this is very interesting. I was in China the other day, I saw, they were telling us, about a new way of doing aquaculture. Big ships, they have a big ship, and they are producing fish on that ship in the high seas. Aquaculture. But remember, that fish will be most likely eating, these are carnivorous things. So again, that's an area that we need to be thinking about as Africans. What fish do we want to produce? Because there are so many varieties of fish. If we are going to go for those because they're high value, some of the fish that is being produced, like the other day I had Dubai is producing salmon in the desert. What are they doing? They have the energy, they can cool things up, but that fish will be very expensive for ordinary people to eat it. So again, we need to be thinking about that. But one thing that is big is the issue of feed. We need to lower cost of production of ingredients. That's why a wholesome approach where we can talk to farmers that are producing these things locally should happen. The point that my friend brought in earlier on, Professor Alois, about how we can do marketing within Africa, moving things around. We need that. Of course, it could be also infrastructure, but I think there are solutions within the country. the continent. What can be produced here can be done here. Egypt is one country that is producing, I showed you in my slide, very high amount of fish, but they import a lot of soybeans. And the competitiveness of that fish is quite good compared to Kenya or Uganda or other things. So it can be done, but we need to really think through these things. We can get it lower, for sure, with the resources that we have. You were talking about land security. So land tenure, I didn't mention it completely because I put all that under the policy frameworks that we need to be thinking about. When we decide what we want, we should be able to say these are the ingredients that are required. I have been to Zambia. I saw I'm giving an example from Zambia where the land is owned by the chief. It didn't stop people from producing a lot of maize. They are producing much more than where we own, in Kenya, for example, where we own title deed. We are still not able to do it. It's not the title. It is the thinking behind what we are doing. If does it matter? If I own the land or I don't own it, I can produce. So some of these things are really solutions that can come from within a country, within an area. Say, okay, let's fix this thing because we want to produce. The question is, what do you want to do? Then other things can come in, whether you, again, something that was mentioned in the morning that I thought I was going to mention, you are triggering it now, is that we need to be context specific. With the context of what is happening, I think that was being spoken all the time. We need to think about context. Yes, I might have a different tenure system. I don't have to force it. I can still produce. And we have seen that very much. They can produce very cheap, actually. Kenyans always buy from Zambia, and the Tanzanians who don't want to sell, and so on. So this is what happens. Yeah.
I know several of you have questions. I saw some hand raises. We are now, it's time to wrap up. The good news is that you are all cordially invited to the second floor to join us for dinner. 2 floors below, there are 2 stairs down here or the elevator where these conversations can continue and you can ask your questions. So please join me in thanking Dr. Charo Karisa for this insightful and comprehensive lecture. And join us for dinner downstairs.